So I was really waited till the last minute to come up with a topic. I think originally I was asked to talk about sex and Tinder, which, as I've been married for 32 years, I really didn't feel qualified to talk about. I could talk about sex, I guess, but I don't think my wife would love it. But all that aside, what I thought might be most helpful because of my own experience was to talk about staying sane in a crazy world. And I want to talk about it in three ways, but I want to sort of begin by giving you an idea of where I came from if you don't know where I came from. And it's not the mean streets of anywhere. I'm a middle-class white kid, but I did grow up with pretty constant what they call suicidal ideation. So as a teenager, I suffered from pretty bad depression, and it's funny to say that I don't think I suffered from thinking about suicide. I just thought about it a lot, and at certain points, I would get scared of my own thinking. Like, it would be so front and center that it would be like, oh my God, what the heck is going on in here? And I wasn't from the kind of family where I was going to get therapy or even talk about it. So I just kind of muddled through as best I could. And so if you had talked to me then about staying sane in a crazy world, I would have gone, I've got to be sane before I can stay there. The world was less my concern than this world. The world in my head was pretty crazy. What happened, and it's a story I've told often enough over the years that it kind of sounds like a story now, but I assure you, when it was happening, it was not a story. Is I one evening just got absolutely bleak to the point where I was uncontrollably sobbing, and I kind of knew that this was an extreme one. I mean, that happened to me from time to time. And I went down to the infirmary at my university where I was a student, and it was late. So I rang the night bell, and this nurse came out, this night nurse, and she just saw this kid sobbing on the steps outside. And she put her arm around me and just started rocking me back and forth. And this was in the South, in the American South. And she said, just say the Lord's Prayer with me, darling. Just say the Lord's Prayer with me, darling. And rocking me back and forth. And I couldn't get it together to tell her that I only knew the Lord's Prayer because I'd been in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar. And so, like, that's one of the songs. But we went for it. And that sort of just simple caring really did me, it calmed me down. And they brought me in, and they said, look, the doctor interviewed me, and so how long have you been feeling this way? Oh, about 5-6 years, but it's only been really bad for the last 2 or 3. And and I'm thinking, like, I'm reassuring the doctor, and the doctor's like, that doesn't sound great. And so they sort of put me in a room, and they said, look, just why don't you settle in here, and then we'll get your details and put you in the system, and blah, blah, blah. When they shut the door, I had a moment of absolute clarity that there was something up in here. Like, I suddenly got, it might sound weird, I suddenly got, this wasn't healthy, what was going on with me. But it wasn't scary in that moment to see that. It was actually almost a relief. I always liked, this is a funny thing to like, but if you go on Google funny epitaphs, things that people have on their gravestones, their tombstones, I always enjoyed doing that even as a kid. I mean, we didn't have Google back then, but and one of my favorite tombstones of all time just said, I told you I was sick. And that's how I felt in that moment. It was like, oh, the reason that I'm struggling so much is because I got a problem. But in that quiet, in that moment of real clarity, for the first time in a while, I wasn't scared. And I just thought, I got to get out of here before they actually get my name. And so I went out. I was going to go out the door, but my nurse friend was sitting at the end of the hallway, and I was like, "Oh, I can't do that to her. She's been so nice to me." So I went out the window and ran off. Now I'm sure they figured out who I was and all that, but it was an interesting moment of seeing that even when my head was crazy, even in the midst of a crazy world inside my head, there was a part of me that was really okay, that was really sane. And I had more moments like that. I had a moment that I talk about, and I did a TED talk called "Why Aren't We Awesomer?" that's been viewed by over 1 million people, which I still think is super cool. I probably shouldn't do that, but it's like, it's 1 million people. But I tell the story that I'm about to share, but it was about a week after that incident at the mental health facility where I had an experience in my dorm room that I can only describe as a giant vacuum cleaner from hell appearing outside my dormitory window on the 4th floor and trying to suck my heart out of my body. I don't think there really was a giant vacuum cleaner from hell there, but it really did feel like there was, to the point where I had to hold on to my dorm room wall to not get pulled out the window. It felt that strong. And there was a phone there, and I phoned the suicide hotline, and I got a busy signal. And I thought that was the funniest thing that had ever happened. Like, I just thought, short of a rain cloud bursting over my head in my dorm room, who calls the suicide hotline and gets a busy signal? And it just kind of popped me out of my head for a minute, and it popped me back into that quiet place, into that sort of place where I was still there, but I wasn't lost in it anymore. I was present in it, if that makes any sense. And I called a friend who came and got me, and I realized over the next couple of days that I didn't want to kill myself. And that was a shock because I'd been thinking about it for years. And I suddenly went, "Oh, you can think stuff, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean, it's not a real thing. It's thought. It's taffy. It's Play-Doh." I don't know if you played with Play-Doh as a kid, but it's like you can make anything out of Play-Doh. And I just made scary pictures about a future where I killed myself. But it wasn't real. It was Play-Doh. It wasn't a documentary. It was a TV show. And I suddenly saw, oh my gosh, all of my thinking is like that. I think it's really real and serious and important, but it's all kind of random and arbitrary and noisy. And in those moments of real quiet, I could really hear the noise. I don't know if you're a city mouse or a country mouse, but if you grew up in a city and then you go camping or you go out to the country, it is scary quiet. Like, it is loud quiet. That's what it was like inside my head. I was so unused to that kind of expansive quiet that I didn't know what to do with it. It was years later. So here's how my journey went. So I got better, and I didn't. After that, the suicide thought just kind of became a thought, and was no big deal. And my wife, I finally admitted to her my whole childhood when we were like 27. We met pretty young. We met at school, and and I was really worried that she would think, "Oh my God, I didn't realize I've married this mentally ill guy, and he's been faking it for older." I didn't know what I thought she would think. But when I finished, she was really kind, and she said, "Oh, and I just basically was telling her about the suicide thought, and she said to me, 'Oh, I have one of those.'" I went, "Really?" Because she's the least depressed person I've ever met in my life. She said, "Yeah, I call it the divorce thought." I'm like, "What?" And she said that, in the early years that we were together, she would get stressed. I would get stressed. It would look like it wasn't working. And she'd go, "Right, we're going to have to get divorced. And oh my God, I'm going to be a failure like my parents." And this whole thing. And she said one day she got quiet. No reason. She didn't do anything to get quiet. It just happens sometimes. And she went, "Oh, I don't want to leave him. I'm just mad at him." And then she stopped being scared of her own thinking. The thought would still come up when she was mad at me. Oh, this is never going to work. We're going to have to break up. Just like for me, the thought would still come up for years when I was really stressed. Maybe I should just kill myself. But it stopped looking like anything other than Play-Doh, like noise in head. Like, yeah, that's a habitual thought. That comes up a lot. And there was a degree of freedom that came with that. Now, when I talk about staying sane, I'm talking about that quiet place in you, that quiet place in me. It's the same place as best as I can figure out. Everybody has moments of it. And it doesn't mean there's nothing going on in your head. It just means it's just going on in your head. It doesn't overwhelm you. It doesn't look super real and important. It's just, yeah, we think. And that's our sanity. That's our mental health. In a spiritual description, they talk about it as home, going home or coming home. But what they also say is we're always already home. That quiet is here now. We just might not be paying attention to it. Like I'm sure there are sounds in the background in the video. I don't know if you can hear my dogs and there's some sort of yard work going on next door. You might have other sounds in your home, which probably you haven't been noticing until we're flagging them now. Well, it's the same with the thoughts in your head. They're always there, but when you're not paying attention to them, they're just there, and then they go and different thoughts come in, and then they go and different thoughts come in. And most of the time we have no idea what's going on in there. And we don't need to. It's just, yeah, there's noise in there. There's thinking going on. We're human. That's what we do. And we feel it, right? That's the beauty of how the system works is we feel thought. So if we're in this dark cloud of thinking, we're going to feel pretty dark. If we're putting the weight of the world on our shoulders and thinking, oh my God, I've got to do this and I've got to do this and I've got to do this and I've got to do this, we're going to feel the weight of that thinking on our shoulders. It doesn't mean anything though, because when the thinking changes, we'll feel different. And even as we're going through all these thoughts and feelings, we're still sane. We're always already home. We're still in the quiet. We're still in our own mental health. We just don't know it a lot of the time. And for me, I so didn't know it that I spent the 20 years, 18 years after that incident in my dorm room learning how to manage anxiety and depression. So I learned every technique, and I don't mean every technique, but I kind of do, because I worked in bookshops and I worked in psychology bookshops and new age bookshops, and I read everything, and I went on every course I could afford and a bunch of courses I couldn't afford. And I actually became known for teaching about how to manage your stress, manage your anxiety, and almost, I wouldn't have called it staying sane in a crazy world. I would have called it how to stop from going completely crazy in a crazy world. And it was helpful. I called it behavioral Prozac because it had the kind of effect of Prozac of settling me down, but it was behavioral. I would meditate, I would exercise, I would write positive things in a journal, I would do gratitude lists. I had a whole host of things. I even wrote a book about it called Feel Happy Now, about how to manage stress and anxiety. And then one day I had an experience that kind of freaked me out. Like it not in a bad way, but in a like I don't know if you like a Scooby-Doo way, like huh? Where it's just like suddenly you're like, what the heck is that? And I had been having some argument with my wife for like a week. I mean, it wasn't a quick one and done, and we don't usually get into it, but we did that time. And then somebody told me, hey, read this book. It was a relationship book, and it's a personal thing. I hate relationship books. But this, I thought it was called The Relationship Handbook. And I thought, all right, I'll read it. And I thought it was interesting. And I thought what was so interesting about it was it didn't tell me how to fix anything. It really just kind of talked about this natural connection that all people have when they're not overthinking it. So it's almost like you and I are already connected, but we have all this thinking between us, so it doesn't feel like we are. And so we try to connect and, oh, we try and find common ground. But actually, when this settles, we're already connected. And I thought that was interesting. I kind of could see that that was true. And it talked about that the purpose of a relationship, and you might laugh because you might think, well, yeah, obviously. But for me, this was rocket science. This was a revelation from the divine. It was like the purpose of a relationship is to enjoy each other's company. And I had been brought up to think that the purpose of a relationship is to learn and to grow and to develop and to raise children and to all these great sounding things that were kind of hard work. But when I looked at it, I went, well, yeah, of course, that's why I want to be in a relationship with somebody over time, because I like hanging out with them. Now, all that was nice, but I didn't think too much about it. A couple of days later, maybe 5 days later, the guy who'd loaned me the book said, hey, how's it going? And I said, great. And he said, how's it going with Nina, my wife? And I said, great. He said, how's the argument? I said, what argument? And I'd literally forgotten, not just forgotten, it took him like a minute and a half to remind me. And I thought, okay, that's weird. How did I just get amnesia for something that seemed like such a big deal? And so I wanted to learn more about what was behind this book. And I learned that there were these principles that I know in some of these talks people have talked about, mind, consciousness, and thought. And I was like, okay, that sounds confusing, but sure, let's go with that. And I just thought I need to learn more about it. I didn't know why, but it was, again, that's the thing, is when you get kind of quiet, it's easy to feel your inclinations. You're just drawn to certain things and not others. My wife and I were talking about going to a concert in October. We go to probably every other month. We go see some band that we're too old to see. But this one, I didn't want to see, and it just didn't appeal to me. And she kept going, why? Why doesn't it appeal to you? Why? And I'm like, I don't know. Why do I like vanilla ice cream more than chocolate? Right? We have inclinations. And when we don't worry about it, we just follow them. And life is kind of easy and straightforward. And that's sort of what I saw. I sort of, in those quieter moments, I went, I want to learn more about this. And to my surprise, the first couple of days of listening to people talk about this, I was bored out of my skull. I really, really, really was just like, okay, maybe they're doing some secret hypnosis thing to me and I'll wake up healthy in the morning or something. Like, I had no idea what was going on. And they asked me to watch a video. And it was a video of a guy named Sid Banks, who was a Scottish mystic. And I like mystic poets and things like that. And I think that's cool. So I had him on, but in the background, and I was drinking beer and waiting to finish this video so I could watch the baseball game. And he said in the middle of his talk, that every human being is sitting in the middle of mental health. They just don't know it. And I snorted beer out my nose and I laughed for like 10 minutes, because for the first time, it's like all the pieces suddenly fit together. I don't know if you saw the Sixth Sense or a movie like that, where there's a reveal at the end and then it suddenly goes back and everything that was a little weird in the movie suddenly makes sense. Or if you've ever had like a surprise party, or where your friends are acting really weird and you keep making up why they're acting weird. And then when the surprise party happens, you go, oh God, that's why they were acting weird. It's like that. Suddenly I saw, oh God, I've always had that. Underneath all my crazy, right? Underneath all my crazy thinking, I've always had that quiet knowing when I needed it. And I laughed because I think it was just a relief. I had spent my entire adult life trying to fight off these diseases I had of depression and anxiety. And I suddenly went, oh God, I don't have a disease. There's nothing wrong with me. I just think a lot. I mean, a lot, but that was it. And it was equal parts thrilling and horrifying to me. Thrilling because I could see, oh my gosh, life is going to get so much easier now. Horrifying because of all the years I had spent suffering. And I talked to a friend, Dr. Bill Pettit, and he said to me, he said, look, if you've been wandering around in a dark room and you've bumped into the furniture and you've knocked over some chairs and some vases and things, and then the lights come on, you can either get worked up about all the things that broke when you were in the dark, or you can get really grateful for the light. And that helped me. That just made me go, okay, I don't have to worry about what I didn't know yesterday. And that was when I discovered I was sane. Like I was genuinely sane. I didn't know that up until that moment. And I was 41. I was not, I was not a kid anymore by any stretch of the imagination, but better late than never. Like I had a woman come on one of my programs in her 70s. She was a professor, very, very smart woman. And she suddenly saw this after 71 years. I mean, made me look like a quick study. And I said to her, does it kind of bother you that you're figuring this out in your 70s? And she's like, no, I mean, hopefully I'm going to make 80 or 90 and at least I'll have some time, you know. It's a wonderful thing to see that you're okay. Now, I get you might not feel okay, right? If you had talked to me when I was going through all that, I didn't feel okay, but I didn't know that was thought. I didn't know that was just the sheer volume of noise I was generating in my own head, because I thought I had to, because I thought it was important to think my way through everything. So if it's okay, what I'd love to do is I want to hit two other points that will kind of speak to staying sane in a crazy world. This was the first point, in case you didn't get the point. You're already sane. You're already okay. And in your moments of quiet, even if they're few and far between, you kind of know that. You have common sense in those moments. You just kind of, it's pretty obvious if there's something to do or what you are inclined towards, and it's pretty easy to say no to what you're not inclined towards. And in those moments, we're just in touch with it. Well, then the second thing is, where's this crazy world come from? If that's the staying sane part, what's the crazy world? Well, there's two crazy worlds, as I've been kind of talking about. One is the one in your own head, right? And I don't know if yours is as crazy as mine was, but most people's are. I've met a lot of people, right? You don't want to meet the inside of their head in a dark alley late at night. Let's just leave it like that. And that crazy world is great because you don't have to worry about it. Because if you leave it be, it settles itself down and you go back to the quiet, and then new thought comes up. And not all of it is great, but enough of it is that you can stay sane and that crazy world can't get you. Because it's happening inside you. It's not happening to you. Well, the other crazy world is the one we look around at all the people and doing crazy things. Like, how could they do that? Don't they know this? Don't they understand that? How could... There's actually an answer to that question. How could they do that? It's because we all live in a world of thought, in a separate reality made of thought. So I don't see the world the way you do. I don't live in the same world as you or anyone, because I think and you think different to me. So we're literally seeing different things. We're looking at the same object, but seeing a completely different thing. And that's a weird thought, but it's biologically verifiable. Like, you don't see the same green that I see. You don't seem you won't taste the same water that I taste. It's not I have a different opinion about it. I'm literally seeing a different color, tasting a different thing, because my experience is made of thought and your experience is made of thought. And those realities can never completely match. But if we understand that, we don't need them to. If we understand that, we start to see, oh, everybody's doing the best they can, given the thinking they have that looks real to them. So if it really looks to me like everybody's out to get me, it's really sane to protect myself against everybody. Whether I do that by attacking them before they can attack me, or I do that by hiding from them or running away from them. That's totally sane if the world was really made of nasty people who are out to get me. But the world isn't. You can find them in the world, but the world's vast. It contains all possibilities. We tend to get fixated on a certain one and go, well, how could that be? It can be that because in their world, what they're doing looks totally sane. They don't feel crazy. I'm not crazy, you're crazy, right? It's because of separate realities. It's because we can't live outside of our own thought, our own understanding, but we kind of can. And what I mean by that is we have consciousness, we have this awareness. And as we become more aware of how it's all happening, that we're not experiencing them or what's going on out there, we're experiencing thought and looking at them. And so it looks like we're looking at something solid, but it's all happening up here. Well, then the crazy world doesn't become something we have to worry about because A, it makes sense. Like the universal answer to why did you do that is it seemed like a good idea at the time. And you kind of even know it because I bet you've had times where you've done something that you look back on and go, oh my God, that was so dumb. What was I thinking? The key's in the phrase. What was I thinking? Well, you were thinking that looked sane. That's all happens. And as you start to see that more and more, you start to notice it earlier. And it starts looking like less and less of a good idea to do stuff when you're all worked up in your head, and more of a good idea to kind of let things settle, get back to yourself, regain your bearings, and then move forward from there. And you can move forward from there. And so if the first point was you're already sane, you're okay, babies don't need therapy, you were born happy, it's all still there. Second, the world actually does make sense if you understand separate realities. If you understand that we're all living in our own thought-created reality, and that given the thinking we have that looks real to us, that looks like real reality and not just thought, we're doing exactly what it makes sense to do. So we can kind of understand the crazy out there, but also we can see it can't get us. We suffer from thought, not the world. But then the third is, how do we navigate? If we can't trust our thoughts, if it's all up for grabs, if it's all kind of being made up and a little bit arbitrarily why I see it the way I see it and you see it the way you see it, then how the hell do you know what to do? Well, as I said, we all have an inner sense of direction, an inclination to move towards this or away from this. I'm not inclined to go see that concert with my wife, but I was inclined to see the last one. And we've all got that. We just don't trust that it's enough. So we have to come up with reasons for it. Like my wife wanting me to explain why I didn't want to go see Lizzo in concert. I don't know. Couldn't tell you. But I know I don't. And there are other things that I absolutely know I do want to do. And so when I can, I do. And what I've learned over the years is I can trust that. You can trust that. Any human can trust that inner sense of direction when they're kind of quieted down, when they're in their health, in their sanity, in their, I don't even know what to call it. So for me, that is literally the answer of how do you stay sane in a crazy world. One is you realize that you always were sane, you always will be sane, no matter what, because that's your nature. That's all of our natures. Two is you start to see where the crazy world comes from, and it doesn't come from anything other than thought believed. Thinking that looks so real that it doesn't look like thinking. And then third, you navigate that world, including maybe doing things to change it. by your own inclination. If you're drawn to work for or against a certain politician, great. If you're drawn to move towards or against, well, nobody's going to be against certain causes, but towards something that you think will make the world a better place, great, go for it. But if you're not, you can trust that too. It doesn't mean you're a better person or worse person. It means you're following your own highest guidance, your own inner knowing, your own inner sense of direction. And the beautiful thing is, you're the expert on you. Nobody else can tell you what you should be inclined to do. People probably do tell you what you should be inclined to do, but nobody else can know. So I sometimes use the analogy of shoe shopping, right? There are shoes that look great on the shelf, but when you put them on, they just don't fit. And I don't know if you've ever had like a pushy salesperson or parent who says, they look great on you. You should get these. These are great. And you're like, they don't really fit. Oh, no, they'll fit fine. They'll stretch, right? That's us trying to do what everybody tells us is the right thing. If the shoe fits, wear it. But most shoes that other people give you don't really fit. And you're the only one who can guide yourself through that. But fortunately, you have the equipment to guide yourself through that. It's already built in. You just maybe need to listen to it a little bit more than you're used to doing. And that's kind of all I got, unless there are some questions out there, which I'd be happy to take.
I'll just let people know that if you would like to ask a question, you can type it into the chat box, or you can put your hand up and you can come on. We can invite you to come on screen. So if you've got any questions, just let me know. In the meantime, I'll just ask Michael, because I know there are a lot of people and a lot of young people are very concerned about the state of the planet, right? And what's happening with global warming, and that we may not exist in a very short time. And there's a lot of thought going on around that. There's a lot of talk going on around that. And I just wondered if you'd say a bit about how people can, I'm so happy with the way that you explain it all. It's so clear that the way that you've explained. So maybe you could just say how that fits in with what they're worried about global warming, for example.
Yeah. And this would be true whatever you're worried about, because everybody's got something. There's plenty of things you can find to worry about if you want to. But the problem is, worry doesn't change the world. I don't know if you've ever played pin the tail on the donkey, but so you get blindfolded, spun around, and then you have to try to pin the tail on the donkey. And what makes the game fun is that you're blindfolded and dizzy, because it's hard. If you weren't blindfolded or dizzy, it would be a really stupid game. You would just pin the tail on the donkey and go, this is easy. I'm brilliant at this. What else you got? We approach changing the world as if it's a game of pin the tail on the donkey. Before we do it, we get our heads spun around and dizzy and blindfolded, because we get so sure that what we think is the way it is, and the future is going to be this, and we got to do this. And so now we're trying to fix it blindfolded and dizzy. Well, good luck. And by the way, it's not just you. It's everybody. It's the people who are in charge. It's the people who think they're in charge. It's the people who aren't in charge. Everybody's doing it. And the funny thing is, the number one thing we do to enroll other people in changing the world the way we think it should be changed is we try to get them as dizzy and blindfolded as we are. We try and get them as worked up as we are about it, because we think, wow, if we're all dizzy and blindfolded, this is going to go great. We don't think that, of course. What we think is, unless you're really upset about something, you won't do anything about it. It's not true. People think, but if I'm just all like Zen and in my sanity and stuff, I won't do anything. If you think about somebody who sits around all day and doesn't do anything, they're usually depressed. Actually, when you're sane, when you're in your health, you'll do all sorts of things. You tend to be very active and engaged in life. So it's counterintuitive, or maybe not counterintuitive, but counter to habit, to realize that, oh, if I'm inclined to do something, I'll do it. And I don't need a reason. I don't need to be scared to do it. In fact, it doesn't work as well when I am. It's okay if I am, because sometimes we just are. But I'm not going to do my best job of solving the problem and pinning the tail on the donkey when I'm running around in circles in my own mind, blindfolded, trying to feel my way to a solution. When I can look it in the face, stone cold sane, stone cold sober, and go, wow, this is fucked up. Let's see if we can fix it. We've got the best chance we've got at fixing it. So I can't tell you what to do because you're the expert on you. You've got an inner guidance, and it will tell you. It will just move you. It'll move your bones if you let it. You don't even have to decide. You'll just find yourself getting involved in certain things and signing up for certain things and talking to people about certain things. But if you understand that none of us do our best when we're worked up, you'll be less inclined to try and get everybody as riled up as you are, and more inclined to kind of take off the blindfold, wait for the dizziness to pass, take a fresh look at things, and see what you're guided to do.
I just want, and absolutely, that's really clear. Could you just say a little tiny bit more about the guidance bit, where the guidance is coming from?
Yeah. Like, I understand from reading books that a compass works because there's a magnetic nature to the poles of the planet because of the spin, and that the compass is drawn to the magnet at the North Pole. It's not a physical magnet, but to that energy. And so you can always navigate by it. That's Sergeant Pepper. You can always navigate by it because true north is fixed. It's a fixed point. So you can find everything else, you can navigate in relation to it. Well, we have that in us. And the fixed point is a feeling. And it's not, to my mind, a good feeling, a bad feeling. It's just a kind of a knowing. Sometimes we just know stuff. And most of us haven't learned to trust that, haven't learned that that's true north. It doesn't mean everything we do will work out the way we'd like it to, but we can rely on that knowing to guide us. And if we don't know, we don't know. So one guess is as good as another at that point. But what you find, the more you settle down, the more you are willing to take a step back and regain your bearings before you look at how to solve the problem, the more that feeling will be there for you to guide by. And you'll feel it because you'll either feel off, like, oh God, there's something off here, I don't know what it is, or you'll feel really clean and clear. And everybody does really well from clean and clear.
So that's lovely. And you must be explaining this really, really well, because nobody is asking a question at all.
It's a very kind interpretation of the data, man.
And in case anyone doesn't know, this is Michael Neill, and he is the author of the book that so many people in these interviews has mentioned as the way that they started understanding this understanding. And I'm sure you'll, which is the Inside Out Revolution. And so many people have mentioned the book and mentioned Michael being the introduction that they had. So in case you didn't know, this is Michael, and there will be a link to his page on our website underneath this video, and links to his books and to where you can find out more about him, and also to the online courses that you do, because I just did one of your online courses, which was really good too, Michael. That was brilliant. Yeah. So if there are no more questions, then we're going to end it here. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. That's really good. Thanks, Michael. Really clear. And if anyone, what most people have said about the book is that they read it once or they listened to it once, because it's audiobook too. And they knew that there was something in it, a bit like you said when you first read something about this understanding. They knew that there was something there, but they didn't get it. And they read it again, and they listened again, and they read it again, and eventually something clicked, and they suddenly had, oh yeah, it really is that simple. So what I'm suggesting is that people maybe watch this again and again until you really hear something, because that, what Michael's just said, is so clear and so life-changing if you haven't heard it before. So thanks so much for being here, Michael, and explaining all of that to people. And
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to the dog too.
Oh, dog's always happy to oblige.
All right.
Take
Thanks
care.
very much. Bye for now.